All right, today we're putting on our detective hats. We're going to investigate one single, really powerful biblical word that, for a lot of people, brings up feelings of fear instead of hope. That word is righteousness. We're going to peel back centuries of, misunderstanding to get to its original, and I think you'll find pretty surprising meaning.
So, let me just ask you straight up. When you hear that phrase, the righteousness of God, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For so many of us, it's a courtroom, right? A judge with a gavel, a standard we know we can never meet. But here's the thing. The Bible calls the revealing of God's righteousness good news. How can that be? That's the puzzle we are going to solve together today.
So on one side, you've got this common view, righteousness means punishment. It's a stern judgment against us. But what if there's a totally different meaning? One that's all about loyal love, about faithfulness, about God acting for his people, not against them. This is the tension we're going to dig into.
Our whole investigation really kicks off with this one crucial verse from the New Testament in the book of Romans. The Apostle Paul puts this idea right at the center of everything.
And there it is, Romans 1 verse 17. Paul says that in the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed. This is our primary clue. And notice where he says it's revealed, in the good news. That's absolutely key.
Now, the Greek word Paul uses here is dikaiosine. And here's the puzzle, right? If dikaiosine just meant a punishing kind of justice, that would be the worst possible news. It just wouldn't make any sense. The fact that it's at the very heart of the gospel tells us it has to mean something else. It must be about God acting for people.
So how do we crack this code? Well, the key isn't in some modern dictionary. Nope. It's a much, much older source, an ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament that Paul and the entire early church would have known like the back of their hand.
Check this out. This is basically our decoder ring. In the original Hebrew scriptures, there's this incredible word, hesed. It means loyal, covenant-keeping, steadfast love. Now, centuries before Paul, Jewish scholars translated their scriptures into Greek. That version is called the Septuagint. And when they got to the word hesed, they sometimes used a very specific Greek word to translate it. And what was that word? You guessed it, dikaiosine. Paul is tapping right into this rich history.
Let's just look at the data for a second. In the book of Genesis alone, that Hebrew word for loyal love, chesed, shows up 11 times. It's a huge, foundational idea right from the start.
So, how did those ancient translators handle it? Well, 6 times they used the Greek word for mercy, which makes sense. But 5 times, that's almost half, they chose dikaiosine, our word for righteousness. This is a massive clue. It tells us that for the people who shaped the language of the New Testament, loyal love and righteousness could absolutely mean the same thing.
Okay, so data is one thing. But stories are where this really comes to life. So let's open up the case files from Genesis, where the translators made this exact fascinating choice.
Our first piece of evidence comes from Lot. He's literally being dragged out of the city of Sodom before it's destroyed, and he says to God's messengers, "You have shown me great chesed, or great kindness, in saving my life."
So the original Hebrew is hesed. But in the Greek translation Paul was reading, this incredible act of life-saving kindness is called dikaiosine. You see? This shows us that righteousness isn't a death sentence. It's an action for life.
Okay, case file number 2. It's a prayer of absolute praise. Abraham's servant just found a wife for Isaac, exactly like he'd hoped. He thanks God for not giving up on his hesed and his emet, his steadfast love and his faithfulness.
And again, same pattern, the Hebrew word chesed, steadfast love, is translated in the Septuagint as dikaiosune. So in this story, righteousness is God's faithfulness in action, the way he follows through and fulfills his promises.
Our last piece of evidence comes from Jacob. He's looking back on his crazy life, and he's just amazed at how God has protected and provided for him. He says he's not worthy of all the deeds of chasadim, that's just the plural of hesed, that God has shown him.
I mean, think about it. Jacob crossed the river with nothing but his walking stick, and now he has this huge family and flock. He sees all this provision as an act of God's loyal love. And what does the Greek translation call it? You know it? Dikaiosine. Righteousness is God acting to provide for his people.
So we've looked at the clues, we've examined the evidence from these ancient stories. What does it all add up to? We can now put together a new definition, one that actually fits what was going on in the world of the Bible.
Dikaiosine, righteousness.
It's not some abstract moral measuring stick. It's relational. It's active. It's God's faithful, loyal love showing up in real time, in real history, to act on behalf of His people.
Now, let's go all the way back to where we started, Romans chapter 1, verse 17. When Paul says the gospel reveals the righteousness of God, he isn't announcing a new system of judgment. He's announcing that God's covenant-keeping, life-saving, promise-fulfilling loyal love is now being put on full display for everyone to see. And that is the best news you could possibly imagine.
So, look, this has been a fascinating word study for sure. But what's the big takeaway? Why does getting this ancient definition right actually matter for you and me today?
Well, it matters because if God's righteousness is this kind of active, loyal love, then any community that wants to reflect His character has to live the same way. It means being righteous is about so much more than just not sinning. It's about being faithful in our relationships. It's about sustaining and restoring people. It's about acting for the good of our neighbor, especially for the people who are most vulnerable.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. Our world is full of calls for justice, and rightly so. But what if we started to redefine that quest? What if seeking justice became less about payback and punishment, and more about this ancient, beautiful idea, the relentless, faithful pursuit of acting in loyal love for one another? What would that look like?